Hey everyone, my name is Jonathan Gavris, and I am a security operations engineer at Hurricane Labs, and I love building stuff in Splunk SOAR. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about a custom function that I developed to help you sort containers that get ingested into Splunk SOAR, that help you sort them to different labels to run different playbooks, right? So that's what we're going to talk about, and I am going to start off here by going to the generator app. Now, the generator app is essentially an app that allows you to generate dummy Splunk alerts. And it's very useful to help build playbooks, kind of getting a feel for Splunk SOAR, and it's a good tool to learn on and basically build or generate data. So we're going to go here to this asset, go to ingest settings, and we can see here that I'm ingesting, if I go to asset settings, 20 containers to this generated events label every 1 minute. So that's a pretty good amount of containers. And if I go to the drop down menu up here and click on events, you can see that this is working swimmingly. And all these containers, wow, there's a lot of malicious URL request attempt containers being ingested, but they're all being ingested under the generated events label as we would expect. Now you can see there's a few different types of containers here. So we see ASN transaction, failed login attempt, malicious URL request attempt, and if I keep going, we'll see some malware alerts. But generally, these are the heavy hitters, the ones that get ingested the most, which are the malicious URL request attempt, ASN transaction, failed login attempt, and then those malware alerts. So this is great, but there's a limitation here. If I want to run different playbooks on all these different containers that are getting ingested, they all have to be set to run on the generated events label, which is not ideal, right? Because if the different containers have different data, which they do, it's not ideal to run different playbooks or the same playbook to try to figure out what container it is. So ideally you want these containers to have different labels so that it runs the right playbook and only the right playbook. So that's basically what the custom function I built deals with. So going here to this playbook, and this is the playbook that sorts the containers. And it uses the custom function that I developed that I've dubbed the sorting list. And the reason I call it the sorting list is because it's sorting, and it also uses the custom lists here in SOAR. So here's a custom list that I made called alert sorting, and this is the list that the custom function here is referencing. So what's going on here? What's going on behind the scenes? Here, in this field name, you are specifying the name of the custom list in SOAR, which I did. We see here it's called alert sorting, and this is the custom list. And here we see that this is two columns, and it's a key value pair between column A and column B. So column A here is your key, column B is your value. So your value here being the output label, or the label that you want the container to be. And column A here being your key is a string that the custom function will take. So it'll take the string from column A and compare it to whatever data path you specify here in this field. So I call this the key comparator because you're comparing the key. So here we have the container name data path specified. So if I go here to random container, we see here that the container name is malicious URL request attempt. So what the custom function will do is it will look through this column, see if it matches, if any string in this column matches inside of the string in whatever data path, which in this case again is the container name, and it will say, hey, that matches, output this label. So one thing I want to emphasize, though, is that the key here, the column A, the string in column A, does not need to match the data path entirely. And this is because sometimes in a container name, or you could even use an artifact field, they have variables that change, right? So this could say a malicious URL request attempt from, and then contain like a defanged URL. And that's different for every container that'll get ingested. But I still want all these containers to end up with the same label so that they could run the same playbook. So the way the custom function is made is to check or to take a string from column A to see if it is inside the data path. So we can see here that it's only malicious URL request, and yet the full name here is malicious URL request attempt, and it would still match. So that's just to give you some flexibility in case there are variables in whatever data path you're trying to compare to. So the third item here is just the defaults label. So if you have some container that gets ingested and you don't have it specified here in the list, it will then just output this default label. So let's give a little demo showing how this works. So I'll set this active, I'll hit save, and I'll just type in active here. And now we can see that what's going to happen is it'll do its sorting, it'll do its comparing, it'll then go into this container update custom function, and then it's basically saying, hey, this container, what container are we updating? This container ID, and then we'll take, what do we want the label to be? We'll take the output of the sorting list, which is going to be the new label, which is going to be one of the values here in column B. So, and then at the end here, all this is a format block that says, hey, the new label is whatever it is, and it's just also taking the output of the sorting list, and then it's adding it as a comment to the container. And it looks like I accidentally moved something here, so I'm just going to type in saving. That saves again, and now this should start sorting our containers as they get ingested. We can see here that, yep, they already started. So if I scroll down a bit, these ones were ingested 2 minutes ago, and these ones started being ingested a minute ago. And we can see that these ones are generated events, but the new ones here started sorting to their new labels. So when the playbook, or when the container sorts to its new label, it'll trigger the playbook to run, or any playbooks associated with that label to run, which is what we want. So that malicious URL request attempt containers will run whatever playbooks on this malicious URL label. Failed login attempt label, or containers will run whatever playbooks on a failed logins label, and so on. And this is also really scalable. Theoretically, you can scale this, however big you want, with however many alerts you want. Now, one thing that I do want to mention as well is that here we're using the container update custom function, but we also have the capability of just letting the sorting list itself update the container. And so this is some of the flexibility that you can do with the custom function, is that you can just open it up. So here's the custom function, and if I scroll down, or let me hit edit, and come down here to line 66, this will now, if I uncomment that out, it will now automatically update the container with the new label instead of having to pass it to a new custom function. So if you want to do it that way, it's a little cleaner, but just to give flexibility, if you just want to test it without updating stuff first, that's why I have it commented out. So I'm going to save the custom function here and hit next. We're just going to say uncommented line 66, save it. And now, while that saves, I'm going to go back to playbook here. I'm going to remove the container update custom function, and this is a community custom function, so this should be available with your SOAR instance. But now, even with that completely removed, and I save this, we'll just say saving. This will start bringing in events and then also sorting them just as it did with the update container, or container update custom function. And as we can see, yep, these just generated in, and they're sorting just as they did before. Everything is working swimmingly, and now this gives you a whole bunch more flexibility, especially if you're using an on-pull action to bring in your data into Splunk SOAR. This kind of expands your horizons a bit and doesn't leave you limited to just the one label you're bringing in the data in. So hopefully this gives you value in your SOAR environment, and I will see you in the next one.